Welcome back to the PCW Wrestling channel. I'm Tom Colohue and today we are reviewing Monday Night Raw. Stay tuned for information on Keith Lee's impending return, the plans for the tag and women's championships over on Raw, and some information on the future of each individual Retribution member. This week's Monday Night Raw was recap central, suggesting that the WWE simply have no faith that you are watching every single week. This is something that they go back to this time every year, just a mountain of recaps and rematches, because the ratings are always so low that they think people are just tuning in maybe once a month. It's a real problem for the actual hardcore fan who does watch every week, because the shows really can struggle for momentum. That said, there were a couple of big memorable moments and some build towards impending feuds which we will get to very shortly. If it's your first time here, be sure to click subscribe. If you're a regular, by all means please click like, and let's get straight into it. The show opened, as seemingly usual, with Drew McIntyre. It hasn't been the case for the last few weeks, but if you go back over the last year or the whole previous season, I guarantee you Drew McIntyre opening Raw is a very, very common theme. This week he was talking about the remaining members of Retribution, those being T-Bar and Mace, that attacked him last week, calling out MVP and demanding answers. As you might expect, MVP did arrive, but only to serve as a distraction so that Mace and T-Bar could take out Drew. From this we had some very confusing promos. Firstly, Mace and T-Bar listed some animals and then walked away. That was a promo and a half. Secondly, Drew McIntyre went to Adam Pearce and asked for a handicap match. He was told you'll need to find a tag team partner, and then they announced a handicap match. Someone missed a beat there. Our first match of the night was the Viking Raiders taking on Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin and picking up the win again. Slightly less impressive overall display, but still an impressive display regardless. They are doing these matches and rematches essentially just to say, this is the Viking Raider offense, if you've forgotten it, here's when you're supposed to pop. Interestingly, when they hit their Viking Experience finisher, Adnan Virk, the new play-by-play commentator on Raw, once again called it the Viking Express. I believe he's either confusing this with Braun Strowman's Strowman Express, or maybe there's a three-man tag team coming with Braun Strowman joining the Viking Raiders. It's not impossible that he's a step ahead of us here. At the moment, the Viking Raiders are very much being re-established en route to taking on AJ Styles and Omos, who once again were not on the show this week. There was a bit more build towards the tag division a bit later. I do believe the New Day are more likely to get a rematch first, before we then get the Viking Raiders going through Elias and Jackson Riker, again en route to the championships, or at least a championship opportunity. After all, I don't know if you know this, but Omos is a big guy, and you need someone very big to take on a big guy. I mean, how are you going to get him out of Royal Rumble? Matt Riddle annoyed Randy Orton into giving him a match, and I kind of have to give Matt Riddle credit here, because with the way that the WWE book shows on the outside, if you're on the outside looking in, it looks like they announced one match for the entire show. At least we have someone going around backstage trying to take opportunities as they come in. Speaking of opportunities, Charlotte Flair's rebrand continues at pace, with some new gear, some new branding, and generally some new Charlotte. The big deal here, as regards her previous promo last week, was that she is now calling herself The Opportunity. Not sure she's focus grouped that as well as she could have. Charlotte, Ripley and Asuka did combine for a promo section here, in which Charlotte Flair spoke over Asuka and spoke very slowly as if Asuka couldn't understand her. Asuka's response was to do that thing they always do in the women's division of just calling her a bitch. Never heard that one before. I know it's treated as a big deal in WWE when somebody does a swear, but we're kind of getting used to it now. You know, we're kind of getting used to it. Matt Riddle and Randy Orton was our second hour draw segment, and probably the match of the night, to be completely honest. It was about 13 minutes and Riddle did pick up the win after a quite substantial period of Randy Orton dominance. It was a surprise pin, still a 1-2-3, so a clean pin and a clean win, but Randy Orton can at least say he was surprised or shocked into the finish there, so there's a little bit of face saving. However, this is still a win for Matt Riddle, and if we go back to the win that Keith Lee had over Randy Orton, you can tell that Randy Orton is doing a lot of giving in the division at the moment. Adam Pearce and Sheamus had a promo backstage, which, when you see what happened later on the night, was again quite confusing. Sheamus was saying he would wrestle regularly but would not wrestle for the title. Later on he announced a United States Championship Open Challenge. Confusing here, confusing. The idea seems to be that they are waiting for Keith Lee to be cleared from whatever injury he may have. We don't have that information at present, but when he is cleared, all signs seem to point to Sheamus defending against Keith Lee. That was the intention. Keith Lee was supposed to be the champion going into WrestleMania and probably after it as well. So it seems like they're trying to right the course, but whatever Keith Lee's injury is, it seems to just sort of keep going. Our Women's Tag Team Championship segment this week was a rematch with Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler against Lana and Naomi in a non-title match. This started out exactly as you'd expect. We've seen these four wrestle in many different combinations over the last few months, so it's basically the exact same match. However, Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose did get involved this time, distracting Nia Jax, encouraging Nia Jax to leave ringside, and then Shayna Baszler, unfortunately, was made to do what she has been doing best recently and taking the pin. A loss for the Tag Team Champions suggests that next week we may see a Tag Team Championship match, but Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke certainly have earned the right to be in it, given that they lost and then cut a promo the next week. A Miz TV segment aired right in the middle of Raw, which essentially was an advertisement for Miz and Mrs. That's basically all it was. Damian Priest came down to challenge The Miz to a match, which is of course why John Morrison wasn't in this segment, for a bit of a deviation from what happened last week. This match will happen later in the night with Maurice at ringside. Elias beat Kofi Kingston in about 3 minutes. This is to continue the build to another rematch between New Day and Elias and Jackson Ryker. That would then build Elias and Jackson Ryker ready so that it means something when the Viking Raiders eventually defeat them en route to AJ Styles and Omos. The handicap match between Drew McIntyre and Mason T-Bar did not last long, Mason T-Bar eventually overpowering Drew McIntyre with a constant 2-on-1, the match being thrown out by DQ, so a win for Drew McIntyre. However, Drew McIntyre was then rescued, for some reason, by Braun Strowman, and after a commercial break, we had a tag team between the two former members of Retribution and Braun and Drew McIntyre. Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre were made to look incredibly powerful here, as you would expect given that they are the main eventers in this particular aspect. However, Mason T-Bar did win via disqualification when illegal objects were used by Braun and Drew McIntyre. Those illegal objects, the masks worn by the former Retribution members, they have been unmasked. And I tell you what, I was shocked and appalled to find that Dio Madden and Dominik Dijakovic had been under those masks all along. Who could have seen that coming? This is of course the formal end of Retribution. Mason T-Bar will find new identities as it were, but they are away from the Retribution branding, which has not really helped anyone. Flapjack and Reckoning, now probably recognised more as Shane Thorne and Mia Yim, have been moved to SmackDown. This has been reported by PW Insider and Post Wrestling, and I expect to see them debut sooner rather than later. Finally, Mustafa Ali is still a Raw talent. However, WWE Creative at the moment are struggling to find something to do with him. I expect to see a few things thrown at the wall here because he wasn't released for a reason. Damian Priest defeated The Miz in a pretty good match overall, despite multiple attempted interferences from Maurice. The Miz has fallen a little bit down the pecking order here. It wasn't long ago he was beating Jeff Hardy quickly clean, but here he is losing to Damian Priest. This goes a little bit of the way to repairing the damage done last week, when the suggestion was clear that Damian Priest could not win without Bad Bunny. Now it's clear that he can, and even though the finish wasn't clean in his favour, it means he's overcome more odds, so he's getting a little bit of that Roman Reigns / Drew McIntyre booking. As an aside, where the hell is Jeff Hardy? Sheamus declared his open challenge in the middle of the ring with not long to go left of the show, so we knew there wasn't really enough time for a match. The open challenge was answered by Humberto Carrillo, who came down, tried to celebrate and hype up a crowd that naturally wasn't there, and in his distraction got mauled from behind by Sheamus. I can only imagine this is building to a match next week between Sheamus and Carrillo, which I would not mind. I'm actually quite excited to watch that match, and I think if anything, Carrillo is taking the spot that Jeff Hardy had occupied previously in that feud with Sheamus. The high flyer who can get a pop from the crowd, and he's just sort of filling time. Still, that said, clearly with him not being released, there is some plan for him. We also saw Angel Garza a little bit earlier in the night, so maybe we'll see more people on TV now that there is a bit more room. Finally, our main event was Charlotte versus Asuka. Charlotte's rebrand continues. She has new gear with the polka dots reminding me of Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans, of course, who her dad was a big fan of. So Charlotte's the opportunity, and she's wearing gear from a wrestler that her dad was. I'm not gonna go further on that. I'm just gonna leave that there. The match itself lasted only about 10 minutes or so. Rhea Ripley was involved pretty much from the off. She came down at the same time as the wrestlers and prowled the ring like a predator, which I very much enjoyed. That said, she chose her moments to actually interfere. Charlotte was in position to win. She was bridging into the figure 8 when Rhea Ripley pulled her arms away, removing that move from play and allowing Asuka to get the win. Asuka, by the way, still has not had a clean win over Charlotte Flair, and in fact hasn't had a clean win in a very, very long time. The show ended with Charlotte losing her mind and attacking a referee, exploding as it were, based on what commentary are always saying. This was a new string to the bow of Charlotte Flair, a little more rage and a little more impact, and I respect that. She's going full heel as it were, because the WWE really aren't sure whether Rhea Ripley should be a heel long term, especially with the amount of top level women superstars in the company who are already heels. The vast majority of top level women in the company are heels at the moment, which is why we're seeing changes for Raquel Gonzalez and now a softening of the heel touch for Rhea Ripley as well, especially if Asuka will be taking time off. The plan at current seems to be for WrestleMania Backlash a triple threat match between Asuka, Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley, and I am there for it. This week's Raw was repetitive. There was a lot of rematches and a lot of matches we have seen before. There were a couple of moments that kind of saved it, but it still wasn't a particularly strong Raw if you want new content. The WWE, from where I'm sitting, with all the recaps as well, really are suggesting that at the moment they don't expect people to be watching week in, week out. For me, it is a detriment to the show for you to believe that. There were a couple of moments which I believe will get replay and recap in the next few weeks, but for the moment, SmackDown is still the strongest show by far, and NXT tomorrow might be better as well. I've been Tom Colohue, you've been watching the PCW Wrestling channel, and I will see you next time.